Okay, everyone, welcome so much, everyone, to week 3 of the Inspire series. Now, there's one person missing, which is Jen. She's unfortunately come down with COVID. So wishing Jen all the best. Hope she gets better soon. And also, one of the worst things is that my laptop camera died. So I'm using an old webcam, USB webcam from 1875, which only uses 1.3 megapixels. So that's why I'm looking a bit vintage, I think, Sarah.
I think
Yeah.
you know how they used to put like Vaseline on
Yeah,
the camera
that's it. The soft focus to make me look even more beautiful.
to make them look like more romantic.
Yeah, that's it. You got it. And it was Valentine's Day. Anyway, so today we are going to talk about the collaborative chronicles, the synergy between the author and the illustrator. And I think this is something that a lot of authors or wannabe authors or new published authors really want to understand how that works. What's the process? They may have a great idea in their head, but they go, what happens with the actual pictures? How does that work? And from my perspective, I'm the actual illustrator as well. So I just have to argue with myself and say, Josh, that's a shit picture. Can you do it again? Or something like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw it open to the expertise of our wonderful panel. We've got Sarah, we've got Holland, we've got Michelle, and we've got Karen. So I'm going to kick off with you, Michelle. So what is the relationship? How do you find working with an illustrator?
It definitely wasn't what I expected. So my very first experience of working with an illustrator was I sent my manuscript to the publisher, and I thought the publisher had forgotten about me after I'd signed the contract. I thought they'd changed their mind. And then about 7 or 8 months later, I got my book in the mail. And I'm like, oh, okay. That's what my book looks like. So a lot of the time with traditional publishers, there has been no consultation between me and the illustrator at all. It's all been with the publisher and the illustrator. But some of my most favorite memories and some of the books that have done the best are where I've been able to collaborate with the illustrator myself, because it means that I can adapt my text to the illustrations myself instead of potentially having an editor do it. So I've kind of had it both ways. And I mean, obviously, I definitely do prefer having some sort of creative control, but at the same time, I can't even draw stick figures. So I also know that illustrators will have their craft. They are the ones who know how to draw. So I definitely defer to them for how they bring my characters to life.
So the difference between, because you've had a combination, you're a hybrid author, you've self-published, plus you've been traditionally published. Do you find that when you've self-published, you've had more control over the relationship with the illustrator?
I do. I feel like as the person who's paying for the product, that you have to make sure that you're getting something that you really like. Illustrators are expensive, as they absolutely should be, because it is a big thing to illustrate a 32-page picture book, and you do
I want
most
to talk about that
oftentimes
in a
get
minute,
what you
actually. I
pay
want to,
for.
I want to talk about costing in a minute. Yes, keep going, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. So absolutely. I mean, I love illustrators in general. I think they're rock stars. I really like them as people. They're creative and arty, and they think weird like me. So I actually like being part of a team more than anything.
So from your experience then, it's the when you go traditionally published, which is what I've heard as well, the publisher will source the illustrator and then will work with the illustrator on the manuscript and do the editing and do all that sort of stuff. And you as the author, you're sort of kind of just on the outer just a little bit, but every now and then you'll be brought in. But it's mainly it's the editors and the publisher that relates and connects with the author, with the illustrator, isn't it?
Yeah, the person who's paying the bill.
Yep. Okay. Fair enough. Karen, what's your experience been with your new Shell Harbour book and previous ones?
Both sides of the fence, and I've had the courtesy with the publisher of saying, this is who I think this will be your illustrator, and I've been able to look up their work and see it. And I've been able to see the roughs and comment and ask questions, but like in home, I was really lucky. I I loved everything, but I was too scared to show my mum till right at the end because it's influenced by family story. And she said, now, what is this book you're writing? And you better show me. And I was really worried. And then I showed her and she
Did you
said,
have
well,
that in the really thick European accent?
no, my mum's Aussie. She's got that nana. That she said the girl had a bob. And she said, no. She said, there can't be a bob. It has to be plaits. And I said, but it's just about ready to be printed. I don't think it can be changed. So luckily enough, I told Jen, and Elisa was able to change it to make it more authentic. So I think it can speak out if it's something that is to do with the core or the heart of the story. It's not just a superficial thing like the cat's tail should be curved or instead of straight or something. You know, it has to be something.
How did the illustrator react to that? How did they go, oh, gee, that's a major change I've got to do here, and it's right at the end of deadline?
No, it's good.
Yep, she was good.
Yeah, no problem. And the only other thing, I loved everything, and you get a better product when they combine their ideas with yours, and it becomes a whole new entity. If you try and influence their creative process, you're destroying creative flow and what would end up being a better product. On one of the spreads, there's the trends, the buildings have been flattened, and I said, oh, it doesn't really need, it shouldn't really have the smoke. Can't find it. But they made it ended up being the publisher to make the decision, and for emotional impact it was left. So there's so many layers to a story, but ultimately it's up to the publisher. With our Shell Harbour, I actually had an illustrator before the one I have, and we worked well, and the roughs she showed me were great, and after 6 months in, it was like crickets and I didn't hear anything. And she ended up, after a year, I said, well, where are the illustrations? We're ready to go. And she said, I can't finish. I haven't been well.
Oh.
So I had to start again, but it was a blessing because I
So start again with a different illustrator.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it delayed. Yeah, but it was a blessing. I always believe the universe gives you what you need. And even though ideally wanted the book to be out and it delayed it a year, it ultimately has been a gift because the manuscript had sat for a year. So I went back and I killed all those darlings, and then I looked and you have tiers of where you look when you self-publish. It's what you want, what you can afford, and who you're going to gel with, whatever. And so first I raised, the bar was lower, and I looked and I thought, but it's not what I really like, and I'm still got to pay. So I asked one Sydney illustrator and she said, I'd love to do it. And I said, have you ever been to Shell Harbour? No. And she said then she would come down. And then I looked at her style and I went, no, the style doesn't suit. Said, I've got other people I'm considering. And then I approached Emma, and Emma was who I wanted. I'd reviewed books and I followed her on Instagram and I went through her feed and I went, she's the one. And you just know when you know. It just, publisher knows when they know. I knew. And I contacted her, and I'm not used to, all right, I don't contact illustrate, like, you know what I mean? You talk to illustrate, but not on that professional
Normally not the done
level.
thing unless you're self-publishing, like if you've got a publisher, it happens all on the other side,
to approach and what you're supposed to say, but we got on well, and she said what was in my head to me, and she said, yes, I can do it. And I went, okay, let's do this. And she said, I'm ready to start because I've had a cancellation and I'm usually booked out 2 or 3 years. And I went, the universe has provided this. Yes. And then I found out how much and I nearly died.
we're going to be really open here in a few minutes.
I'm not going to say the amount. I'm not going to
Okay,
say
what
the
we're going to
amount.
do, we're going to talk ballpark figures because I think
No,
it's
I'm not going to disclose. But anyway, she said, Karen, do you want the book? And I knew this in my heart. If I have her, the book's going to be exceptional. And she said what was in my head. She goes, do you want the book to be exceptional or okay?
okay, fair enough. That was the price tag.
And I went, okay, that's it. We're done. We're doing it.
Yeah, okay.
And then she lives in Victoria. She's never actually been to Shell Harbour, and you would think so by the illustrations. I went on shoots. I sent her PowerPoints. I sent her information packs. I sent her shells. I sent her web links, and she did her own research and asked me questions. And ultimately, you then become, as the self-publisher, you're not only the writer, you're also the publisher. So when you're dealing with the illustrator, you've got to look at it as publisher as well as writer, and not just go, oh, they're beautiful. So you've got to look and see what needs. Like there was a shot, like there's a dog. I had the luxury of asking for the dog to be included because I lost my dog. But the areas in the book are state park, and the dog was in there, and I said, can't have the dog there. And it looked beautiful, and I said, the dog has to come out. And so that was me having to stand up and say, and on the beach there was a little endangered bird, and I said, you can't have the dog near the endangered bird. So that's what I mean when you self-publish.
Okay. That's what you mean. Yeah.
Publisher, not just a writer, and you've got to have eyes. And then I had suggestions for the cover, and in my head I wanted this, and I kept getting other suggestions, and because I didn't want to pay for more too, because that's extra cost. So if you look, I always wanted it to be the boat harbour, so I just had to pay a little bit, not a lot, because it's that spread. But the children and the dog had to be moved, and then it could work as a front cover.
Oh, okay. And I like the idea that the cover illustration is similar to what's on the inside, but it's slightly different.
Yeah,
I think
and
that's really important.
was my call. And luckily Emma could do that. And where Emma was invaluable was like I had to tell her the size of the book I wanted. And then there's bleeds around the edge. And I don't know about all of that. And I was like,
So
God.
where did you learn that from, Karen?
Myself, just doing it.
Just through the research and going, okay, I need a bleed edge, what quality, with the resolution, all that sort of stuff?
I didn't have to do the resolution, but I had to say the size and allow for 5mm bleed line. I learnt what that is. I learnt the importance of it. I learnt things like checking the gutter and that the images line up. And Emma was invaluable with advising me about whether the book looked professional or not, because she wanted to see it. And she said what I thought. And it was just because when you're doing it yourself, you don't have anyone. You have to do it yourself. And you're making the decision. And sometimes I could ask her a question and confirm what I was thinking.
So was the overall experience, the end result, exactly what you had envisaged? Or was
I didn't have a vision for it. I left it up to Emma, but I knew from the start this made me so happy, and then I let other people talk, because the most important thing when you're getting an illustrator is they connect with the manuscript.
Yeah, that's vital. Yeah.
If they don't connect with the manuscript, you're not going to fit. And so even though I wanted Emma to do this, when she said, okay, send me the manuscript, it was up to her whether, because she's been illustrating for 23 years. She's a phenomenal illustrator. She's awarded, she's done lots of books. And she said, and I knew if she didn't like the manuscript, she wouldn't do it. And then you're square one. But she said, Karen, and I'm still like, oh my God. She said, this manuscript is so well written and I absolutely love it. And I can see so many visuals for it. And as soon as she said that, and she said, they're just flooding me, I thought, that's it, we're on.
You found the right one. That is, I love that story, Karen. Holly, have you collaborated with illustrators for any of your work, or would you like to?
I have not. I would like to. I've talked with a lot of the groups that I'm in. I've heard all kinds of things that people have experienced though with illustrators, and very much what's already been said. You know, how important it is to connect with the manuscript. How, like myself, this my first children's book. I definitely have some definite ideas about what I want the images to look like, but initially I've been following illustrators for quite a period of time, and I'm always looking at their work too. And so my intention is to give them the manuscript and let them, you know, come up with the idea that works, that what comes to them. Like you were saying about let that flow. And, you know, I've seen a few things like that where maybe something like about the dog where people have relayed those sorts of things over, you know, the course of time. And I understand how sometimes there's something like that. It's nice to have control over that, because it could be something that would be like maybe even offensive to someone if you are representing, say, something like that, that's like a memory from an area. But no, I'm really looking forward to picking one for my book, and I'm so curious to know how what the perception is going to be from the illustrator.
I love that, because it's like what you said was you follow a lot of illustrators on Instagram and places like that, which is great, because then you get an idea of what their work is like and how it marries up with yours. And also the second bit is the trust, is that, okay, I'm going to trust. I've got the manuscript, I've got the words, and I'm going to trust what the illustrator is going to bring to that and how they're going to embellish on it. So Sarah, your situation. So you first self-published the Heavy Bag. Take us back to the beginning and how you found the illustrator.
Yeah, so I've self-published the Heavy Bag. So to kind of put some context, it was during lockdown, so it made things a lot more difficult. I actually found my illustrator on Etsy.
Oh,
which
okay.
I was not expecting to find at all, but I saw this little advertisement for illustrations for picture books, and she had already illustrated some picture books, and I absolutely loved her style. She was based in Serbia. They're very European, and as soon as I saw them, I just, in my mind, that was the style of the Heavy Bag. But it wasn't until I was actually speaking to her that I kind of really got a gist of how she was. So I've worked with her now probably for about 4 years on the Heavy Bag with all the different editions, and probably three things that I would say if anyone's listening today and they're thinking of self-publishing, and obviously that means that they need to go and source their illustrator. There are illustrators out there, but it's picture book illustrators. Do they have that experience? Because as Karen was saying, all these little nitty-gritty bits of how this book is going to lay out, that's actually really, really important. Otherwise, you're going to end up with some very static illustrations that aren't going to work in a book, because ultimately you're making a product. So amazing illustrators, but have they got any examples on your picture books that they've worked on? That's quite important.
Yeah.
Also, I mean, with regards to contract, I bought the rights to the illustrations outright.
So you
That
paid a
was
one-off flat fee. So it
I
wasn't
paid
a
a one-off flat
combo of,
fee.
yep.
No, one-off flat fee. And that has actually served me well because it's had so many different foreign editions. One of the first things that publishing houses will ask me when they're deciding on whether to take on the heavy bag is, do you own the rights to the illustrations? Yes, I do. So I think that's probably served me quite well. But I'm also very, very loyal to Larissa, and you know, I tag her into everything. Every time we do take on a new publishing house, I've put her forward with them for any extra artwork or illustrations that's needed for them to go to her, and that's actually worked out well because she has worked on a few of the other editions. So I just think that, yeah, when you're looking for your illustrator, do they have that experience with picture books? Also, which I find is quite a rookie mistake, and I made this, but I know a lot of people do when they first think about self-publishing a book and having that picture book illustrated. They send all these ideas to the illustrator of, you know, this happens in this scene, can you illustrate this? This happens. That's not really how picture books work, as we know. You know, the pictures tell a completely different story, and I think it's a mistake that so many people who are starting out make. Let the illustrator look at your text and what can they take from it, because then they're going to find other little areas in your story that you haven't seen. Don't just ask them to illustrate scene by scene by scene, because basically then you're going to have the same text as the same picture, and that's going to be the whole book the whole way through, and that's not what picture books are about. You really want the illustrations to bring out another part of the story. So I've really enjoyed working with Larissa on the heavy bag. It's been a journey, and I would definitely do it again. I've also been traditionally published, and I agree with Michelle. I mean, you know, the publishers pay for the illustrator, so ultimately you're taken out at that point. And sometimes I'm privy to these conversations if I'm linked in emails, and I can see this conversation between an illustrator and the publisher about my work, but it's nothing to do with me. It's how the publishing house sees the book sitting in their catalogue with everything else. So there's all these other kind of conversations going on. But one thing I will say is that although the illustrator at that point is working for the publisher, I don't know if I've just been really, really lucky, but the illustrators still want to talk to me. They still want to get it right for the writer. And I think that's the whole part of this artist industry, this creative community. Ultimately, we do want to help each other. And so although they work for the publisher, I've still been involved a little bit with, you know, do you like this? How does this work for you? Ultimately, obviously, it comes down to the publisher. But I've been really lucky, and I've kind of had a tiny say. You know, the publisher will choose the illustrator. That's out of your hands. They will choose them. They will choose how the book is laid out. They will choose the spreads. They will choose the palette of the colours. But I have still noticed that the illustrator will still want some kind of feedback from the author. Whether I've just been privileged, I don't know, but that's been, yeah, something that I've noticed.
I think that's a really good insight, and I am going to wrap it up here because I'm about to run out of time for my special Zoom package, everyone. So thank you all so much for your insights, and yeah, we'll come back for episode 4 very shortly. So thank you all so much.